I'm Jamie Toledo. I'm with the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance, and it's always our pleasure to partner with the HEDCO and Hiawatha on the Hiawatha Business Summits. Today is an informal conversation with Debi Durham. She told me not to read anything. Nobody needs to have an introduction for Debi. She's just an amazing resource for all of us, and we're so thrilled that you're here. Thank you so much for being here with us. So as we go along, please feel free to ask her questions, and then we'll have some more time for everybody to network. I do want to make sure that Dennis has a chance to say hi to everybody in Chad. So Dennis?
All right. Thank you, Jamie. For those of you that I haven't met yet, my name is Dennis Marks, and I'm the city manager here in Hiawatha. So on behalf of the city of Hiawatha, I would like to welcome you all and thank you for being here. We're looking forward to listening to Director Durham this evening. Debbie. Thank you. I will remember that.
Yeah, the only person that calls me Director Durham is when I go home on the weekends. My husband calls me that when he's mad at me. So.
No, we're not
You're
mad.
no longer director, yeah.
So, all right. If anybody needs anything, any questions, anything the city can do, make sure you reach out. Give me a call. And if I don't know the answer, we'll get you in touch with somebody that will have the right information and get you the answer. So grab me, introduce yourself a little bit later on, and welcome. Again, thank you for being here tonight.
Chad Pelley, I'm the chair of HEDCO. My co-chair, where is she? I saw her come in. Emily? No? Wow, that was cruel. Thanks everybody for coming out. Most everybody in here I know. This is such a great opportunity, as mentioned, working together with the businesses local in the area as well as Cedar Rapids and the corridor around us. Everybody knows Debbie. I certainly appreciate Debbie, and without Debbie, a lot of what we do in our communities wouldn't happen. So thanks everyone for coming out and giving us the opportunity tonight and sharing this with Debbie.
And I also want to mention that Michael Gold is here too from IEDA. And he said that Debbie wouldn't sit on a chair. She was going to have to stand up, so he called that right. She's a dynamo. Okay, so I have to put my hairy glasses on here. Hold on. Okay, we're going to start with just a few informal questions. And then, Lucy, where are you? Lucy's got her hand up. I'm going to give, if you want a question, just ask Lucy, and she'll run over to you, and you can ask your question. So first off, okay. It was jobs, jobs, jobs. It's still jobs, 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 but now it's workforce, workforce, workforce. So that remains top of mind for everybody here and our region. Can you give us some insight on how well the amazing This Is Iowa program is going and what our businesses can do? I know a lot of people have raised their wages up and done a lot of things with culture, DEI, but any other insight you can give our businesses to attract that workforce and retain workforce?
Perfect. All right, so this is going to be a long answer. Are you ready? All right. So first of all, I'm going to give you, let's put some things in context. So, first of all, Iowa has a population problem. We've had a population problem pre-COVID, and COVID simply accelerated that, right? So going into COVID, Iowa had a labor participation rate of 70.4%, which is second highest in the country, I believe tied with Nebraska, right? We got down to about 65% during COVID. We're about 67 point something, inching our way to 68%. So what does that mean? We still have people sitting on the sidelines. These are not people drawing unemployment. These are just people out of the workforce. What does that look like? Well, in Iowa, we work, right? And so retirees work many years past retirement age. COVID changed that. If you think about it, none of us knew what tomorrow was going to bring, right? There was no rule book or playbook on how to navigate this. If you also remember at the time, our 401ks were extremely healthy. I always say when I come in the door now, I just shred it and I don't even open it, right? So people left. Now we're beginning to see that group come back in, and probably because there's so much pressure right now on just cost of living, where we are with inflation. The other group was women left the marketplace, right? Women age, particularly the highest age group for women was age 45 to 54, which is somewhat perplexing. So why is that? I don't know that I fully know, but what we think is happening or was happening is you had a record number of daycares that closed in Iowa, 33% in the last 5 years, right? And then you had, remember what was happening in the nursing homes. And so basically women of that age, I don't know if they were checking out that could to help take care of their children's children, the grandchildren, or also helping with the aging parents. But the group that is the most concerning to me, do that. The most concerning to me, and certainly should be the most concerning for all of us from just a society's point of view, is young men aged 25 and 34 sitting on the sidelines, right? Millennials. And you think, why is that happening, right? Now, there's a lot of burnout that happened during, there was truly no work-life balance when everybody was working from home remotely, right? There was no clock that people were watching, so they burned out, and they're out finding themselves. And some people think they're back in their parents' basements. I'm hoping that's not the case. All we know is they need to find their way back to the workforce, right? Because Iowa needs to grow. So that's issue number one. So that's why you're having constraints finding workers. So what we have to do is we have to continue to grow Iowa's population. What growth we had is about 44% was immigration. 60% is non-white. We are scheduled to have the first county in the state of Iowa by the year 2030, if not sooner, to have the minority as the majority population. Iowa looks different. Michael and I and several others, we travel the state 2 to 3 days a week, and we're in communities of all sizes, but yet when I'm around a leadership table, I'm not seeing a lot of diversity. And so that has got to change. So we have to grow Iowa's population. So here's what we did. We asked the very question during COVID, because it seemed tone deaf to market our state for tourism, which we run as well, or for new investments when nobody was leaving their basement. So we researched and said, did COVID change the way you look at the place you call home? 7 out of 10 said absolutely. It has changed, so much so that we would consider something different. We would consider relocating. The highest demographic was 30-year-olds, then 40-year-olds and 20-year-olds, which I think is fabulous because as a baby boomer, those are the people who are going to pay for our retirement, right? And so it's important, so the demographics. So then we asked some simple questions. If you were going to make the move, what are you looking for? So tell us the things that matter to you. It was affordability, number one, right? They wanted to live bigger than where they were living, right? And Iowa's just ranked one of the most affordable states, the most affordable state for housing still. The other one was economic vitality, which we were just ranked #1 state for opportunity. So I'm thinking we're checking a lot of boxes here, right? So when you ask, now economic vitality, what that really meant was if they relocate for a job and it doesn't work out, is there another similar job in the marketplace so they don't have to do that again? So that's what they're looking for, and obviously growth. Outdoor rec, natural beauty was huge, right? They want trails. In fact, Michael and I got here early. We went down to the trailhead and we talked to this gentleman that was riding the trail, wanting to know if he knew about the new connection happening. And of course, Michael likes to talk about the surface that they use in trails. He's kind of a purist when it comes to that, but they had this great conversation. They want that. They want outdoor trails and beautiful parks and arts and culture. And oh, by the way, they want to be connected the entire time they're on those trails so they can share that experience with us, including what they had for lunch today, right? And so then we said, okay, out of those 4 pillars, Iowa checks all the boxes. What do you think of Iowa? And their response is, we don't think about you at all. Where the hell is Iowa, right? So it's kind of like this flyover state. So we knew that. We were not surprised by that. So for the very first time, we launched a national ad campaign, and we wrapped it around with social influence media, social influencers, social media. I mean, it was a very, very comprehensive campaign, and introduced the world, or not really the world, the nation to Iowa, called This Is Iowa. So go to our website, check it out. It's breathtaking. The photographs are absolutely breathtaking. People think it's flat corn here, right? They don't know the beauty of our landscape. And then we basically, the narrative is all about where you could live big, right? We used all the research, said all the buzzwords about we have not been properly introduced. And by the way, we measure everything at IEDA and IFA, and so we measured it. Our positives have gone up by 20%. The natural beauty question went up even more. The negatives went down by half. Now, full disclosure, they were only 11% to begin with because nobody knew who we were, but still, right? That's cut in half. And so we're making a difference. Then we're also sending them to our website. And if you go to our website, it becomes a much more active process. So there's a cost of living calculator on there. So you can say, if I took this job in Chicago, how much do I need to live, right, compared to taking it in Iowa? And so we know it's making a difference. The other information that I'm getting, I have to sign over, my firstborn to get it from DOT, is because, we have census data, and that's obviously a long time coming, and many of us question whether it's completely accurate, right? Are we counting everyone? But there is some information that the DOT has called credential surrendering, right? So credential surrendering is that when you move to our state, you have to, within a very short period of time, get a new driver's license and surrender your old driver's license. So we know where they're coming from and we know where they're going. Let me just say that we should be sending a fruit basket to Illinois because, they are sending us a lot of new residents in Illinois. So to think that policies matter, they do matter, right? But we're also seeing some positive things, like even in that Council Bluffs, Omaha area, where we're seeing some really nice net migration numbers coming into the Council Bluffs side of that. And it's all because people are focusing on sense of place, right? It's not just about having a great business climate, which we need. And I was giddy about the tax cut and all the things we need for growth. We got to build communities people want to live in. So places like this are amazing, right? Gathering places where people meet. And so I think Council Bluffs has done a good job with it. So those are all the things that we're doing. So we are going to grow Iowa's population. I am absolutely convinced of that because we've got all the right ingredients.
Well, along the lines of housing, our region and Hiawatha have benefited from the Brownfield-Grayfield program, so thank you. Year after year, it seems like we do really well in this region. Hiawatha has a couple of divisions going up right now, but we are all very acutely aware, too, that there is now becoming some social equity challenges along with the housing. So can you speak a little bit to the audience about maybe some creative solutions for the community as rents go up, and we know have our developers, they need to have market rate prices. How can we convince our communities that this is something that is good and will help the area instead of the not in my backyard kind of philosophy?
Great question. Okay, so let me give you some more statistics. We need 61,000 housing units by the year 2030. Now, think about that. That's like tomorrow. Now, what does that mean by a housing unit? That's everything from supportive housing to homeless, all the way up to single family, and it's all the way to multifamily, affordable market rate, everything in between, right? And so we have really worked very hard to increase support for our housing programs. So with the legislature and Governor Reynolds' leadership, we've put a tremendous amount of money into housing, bringing up more capacity within workforce housing, which has been a tool that you all have used here, increasing capacity in Grayfield, Brownfield. But we also, on the IFA side, which is the federal tax credit program, which are for affordable housing, I really challenged our staff because we have a guidebook that's about this thick, right? So the barriers to entry for a new developer is very tough to get into this program. And I questioned him, I said, what is our objective? Our objective is to build quality, affordable housing. So tell me everything that's in this guidebook, how does it get us there without just raising cost unnecessarily? So we have leaned this down, did stakeholder meetings with developers, listened to the development community, and we really are making changes, even by so much the number of units that you can have at that 30, 40, 60%, and even getting to the point where we're not going to kick people out when they make a few dollars more, because I think that is counterproductive to help people on that cycle to economic independence. But I am going to get on my soapbox because this word affordability is unfortunately, when it goes to city councils and, local governing boards, planning and zoning, it really takes on a very negative image. And it always disguises itself that we're really concerned about traffic or something else that doesn't really have anything to do with what it is. They just don't want that in their backyard. So let me tell you, who is the face of affordable housing? Affordable housing is the pharmacy tech. Affordable housing are the people, the grocery clerks. Affordable housing are the nursing techs. Quite frankly, affordable housing, the face of affordable housing is everyone who didn't have a job that got to stay home in their basement during COVID that had to keep our economy open. And as a Christian and an Iowan, I believe it is a moral imperative that anyone that works in our community should be able to live in our community with dignity, right? And the other thing about these projects is there a market rate in there too. So you don't even know who's behind what door, which is a beautiful thing, is it not? Because it's really meeting people where they are today. And so we really have to change that. The other thing we have to do is that we have to bend the cost curve, right? And the way we do that is we use in the construction industry the same thing we're doing with manufacturing, which is Industry 4.0. It's all about using technology and automation. So I went to Iowa State School of Design. I know the dean there very well because I paid for my son's fancy education there in the architect program. And so I know Louise, and I went there and I said, Louise, I want to build a technology ecosystem around housing, right? And I want to do it with 3D printing housing. And so, but I want to have you do it as design because I don't want it to look like a concrete bunker if you're not into the whole institutional look, right? And I also want you to test it for storm rating. These are concrete bunkers, they're not going anywhere, right? I want you to rate them for energy efficient, extremely energy efficient. I want you to create codes that cities can adopt. I want you to test product in the concrete to make sure that we can to basically create carbon neutral with the concrete as far as testing new bioproducts. We're going to even test, spent wind blades, right, to see if we can do that. And so I want you to do all the research. And then I want to work with our good friends in the community college because they do the training. And we're going to put a printer at one, we've put it in Fort Dodge, but the plan is to do it all across the state to where we train the industry on how to print. You can print these homes in days, right? They're incredible. We're going to do our first homes in Real Theater in Hamburg, Iowa. I guarantee you it does not look like a concrete bunker in Hamburg. They wanted something a little more traditional to fit in with their neighborhoods, and you can skin it that way. But it bends the cost curve. It really helps us with that affordability piece. You can do multi-story. It is amazing what we can do. And so we're gonna work to do this. And then we started talking about robotic bricklaying and all of these things that again can begin to bend that cost curve. So we're approaching this from a continuum of funding.
That's really exciting. I've seen a video of the digital printing, and it looks like toothpaste. It's really cool. Okay, as far as sustainability, bunkers and all that kind of good stuff, renewable energy. As we are looking at both business attraction, projects that are coming in and looking at renewable energy sources, and then our own existing businesses, which is 80% of where we spend our time in economic development, and we're seeing those costs going up. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of our communities embracing renewable energy? Are there any other creative solutions that you've seen along those lines that would help, but we need to be thinking about, and our businesses need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so renewable energy for the state of Iowa is a calling card, and it has been. We've been on this journey for a very, very long time. So if you look at just the investor-owned utilities, they're probably getting close to that 70% mark of true being able to source green. Now, we have a production economy. Our largest component of our gross state product is manufacturing, and then you have the bioprocessing. It is a manufacturing. Renewables are great, but we do need to have a clean base load. I am a big fan of nuclear, right? I think we need to have that conversation the way it's done these days with modular units. It's happening. There's a lot of things happening around that. And so I think eventually we're going to have to look for a clean baseload to supplement the renewables. But the renewables are a calling card. And I will tell you that we have 2 mega sites in the state of Iowa, one in your backyard that Alliant has done in Cedar Rapids. A mega site is 1,000 contiguous acres of industrial land for maybe pretty well designed from one major user or their supply chain surrounding them, right? So these are big deals. This puts you in a league of your own as a state. When it's certified, it means all the risk is taken out. We know what's under. When they start moving dirt, there's not going to be any surprises, right? The other one that we have, we just opened one, Mid-American opened one in Mills County. Now, why Mills County? Mills County is in the Omaha MSA. It's on the Iowa side, but that gives you to a million population, which is also extremely important. So that when we opened it, and Mid-Am is on a trajectory to get to 100% renewables in a very, very short time. Right now, they're in the 80s. And this is not smoke and mirror stuff. They can literally source it. A lot of states say they can do it, but when you really drill back, they really can't get there compared to what we actually can do. We announced that like within a month, we have now in play for number 2 position for a $2 billion manufacturing plant that the salaries will blow you away, and it is all because of the green energy, right? That we can truly source it. That and that million population base that they feel confident that they can actually, and then you've got the transportation grid there too. They've got a great airport, maybe not as good as yours, Marty, but they do have a good airport in Omaha, but it is not as good as yours, I can tell you that. Yeah, they just have that little barge, you know, that little river running through there. But, so it is extremely important. So, but Iowa needs to constantly look at what's next. So here's some other things we're working on, because we run the energy office for the state as well. We're looking at carbon sequestration, and we're looking at it from a supply chain point of view. So we're not just looking at carbon from inputs at the crop level, we're really looking at it, how do you source this entirely through a supply chain so that our companies that have to meet these zero net carbon goals by the year 2050 can begin to claim that. Even so much as having conversations with DOT about can you build corridors actually differently that also can capture some of that carbon savings. So that's very exciting. And hydrogen. Iowa is positioned for hydrogen. We are a producer of hydrogen here, right? And so we could, that's another growing industry from us. And the amount of level of investment is huge. So let me just share that our portfolio today, this is the active leads that we're doing, and as you are correct, still 80% is about existing companies expanding. 20% is new leads. Between the two, our portfolio that we are actively working is worth $19 billion. And it is in advanced manufacturing, companies digitalizing their plant floor because they need to for the automation, but it's also reshoring manufacturing so that people need their supply chains closer. If anything, COVID has taught us the last 2 years that we actually sent too much overseas, right? That we need to reclaim a lot of that industry. And the second thing is bio. Right now there is a ton of equity venture money chasing bio because for right now it really does make sense to look for bio-based chemicals. So everything you're sourcing out of manufacturing that you source on a petroleum, we can eventually do on bio. And that's extremely appealing. And that also is a card for Iowa. So even with all the headwinds nationally, and there are a lot of headwinds economically, right? There's so much uncertainty out there. Iowa is in an extremely enviable position.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm really at the end of my questions. I do think it's fascinating. We've been hearing about deglobalization. So for all those that remember that the world is flat, I think was the name of the book, was all about globalization. What Debbie's talking about with bringing the sourcing back and the supply chains along with the companies. I guess the last thing, and then if anybody has questions, because you don't want to hear questions from me, I want everybody to ask questions out there, is why is it important to kind of keep the pedal on going on both business traction and existing business?
Well, because, you know, status quo is not an option, right? We are either you're moving forward or you're going backwards. It's pretty simple. And economies ebb and flow. And there's a lot of things that the economies ebb and flow that we actually have no control over. And so you have to constantly be putting your name out there and recruiting. I can remember one day, we look like the smartest people in the room, but I have to tell you it was just luck, that we had a major employer close, I think it was in Dubuque, and lo and behold, like that same week at our board meeting, we had a like industry coming in that was going to hire, is exactly the same number of people, and people thought we were a genius. My gosh, these people are great. It was literally luck. We worked with that company for years before they ever made it. The timing just happened to be perfect that day, right? So you can't continue to not. But here's the deal. We can be picky about who we go after, right? We don't take every deal that comes along. In fact, I'm an economic developer who does not believe all good deals are good deals, that all jobs are good jobs. You want those deals that are going, those projects that are going to raise the standard of living for Iowans, right? You want our people, our communities, and our businesses to thrive. And the only reason to do that is you get picky about who you bring to the community, right? And so we had a prospect the other day. We'll never win a deal on incentives, and we never should, because the longer term, you either have to have a value proposition for it or not, right? Because incentives go away. And we had a company who came in. It's a large project. It's in the biospace, handful of jobs, but very good jobs, and they're wanting an unreasonable amount of incentives. And I said, okay, let's look at this. First of all your product is being sold outside the state, correct? Yes. That means you pay no state income tax, because we have single factor, right? None. You pay no state income tax. Oh, by the way, you're going to pay very little property taxes in the community because most of your plant is machinery and equipment. We don't tax that in the state of Iowa. So you're not going to pay any property taxes per se. And what you are paying, you should, because you have to support streets and police and fire and all that. You should be paying something, right? The third thing is, you have to be here because your products are here. So if you don't land to Iowa, you're going to have to move them. So it seems to me that we've already given you incentives, right? And oh, by the way, we have a great community college, and we're going to give you 260E. And so, now we'll see how that works. But that was round one, because again, not everything needs to be incentivized. So when we do incentives, quite frankly, at the state, we actually have a return on investment model that we run. So we need to know that once those incentives come out, what the taxation and what the companies are going to be paying is going to be good for the state, but it's also going to be good for the communities. That's why we would never ask a community to give away more than they should. So the long-term value proposition is what? Now, at the same time, you have to have incentives to be in this game, but you just need to be smart about how you use them.
Okay. So question I have is, as you mentioned many times, supply chain issues that we still notice in construction and development. The question is, we've got a couple projects that are brownfield actually, and workforce housing, and you have a time frame to complete those, which we're well into construction on these. Time frames coming up in probably early spring. And we're working as hard as we can to get them done, but we've been struggling to get products in there to finish them. How is the state looking at those specific situations?
What we're going to do, first of all, we're going to work with you case by case. And the reality is the legislature has given us more flexibility to push some things down the road, which we did. Because before, we didn't even have that flexibility. So we made the change to do that very thing. So we are going to work with you. We do follow the supply chain. The good news to me is, because we also do, looking at all of our commodities, and steel prices are actually coming down, which is a good thing to see. But there are the things. You got the drought in the Mississippi that's going to create major supply chains. You do have the railroad union strike that was settled, which was a good thing, but there's still some unrest out there. And then, of course, you still have what's happening in Ukraine and, China. What's China going to do? I've never seen, when you're seeing protests like we are so publicly in China, they're pushing back. Now, we're going to see if they're going to do some relief on that zero COVID policy, because that's also hurting our supply chain. So you're right, supply chain is still a big issue. But as far as those projects, if I have the authority, which I think they've given me enough leeway to have that, we're going to work with you to make sure you can get the projects done. Now, if you haven't started the project, that's a different story. Yes, okay, yes.
We're still working hard to get it on time, but I just wanted to ask a question, being I had the opportunity.
Yeah, we'll work with you, because we want to see these projects done too. Chad, did you? Yeah, Chad's going to ask a question. I can't wait to see what this is going to be. Okay.
Do you have a checkbook with you?
Not today, no. They don't tend to let me loose with the checkbook, do they, Michael? Because I'm the one that comes back and said, you know, I kind of promised that we would do this, and yeah.
Oh, shoot. You know, I'm in enough discussions, and it's apparent that it's all these great things that you've described about a community. You know, it's the safety, it's the jobs, it's the housing, and it's all intertwined, and it's almost like the plasma ball, I call it. They grow together. Is there any grasp yet on the migration impact that potentially we could see, and pair that with the success of your guys' marketing campaign trying to bring people back and those that aren't here? In those figures you mentioned, I think you said 61,000, I can't remember.
Homes, yeah,
Was
units,
I right?
housing units by the, yeah, you listened, yes, by the year. Yeah, 2030, that's great.
So, you know, I guess to me, the unknown out there in a lot of our developments, you know, the population is growing. You've said that, you know, of the United States.
Slowly,
and of
but
Iowa.
growing,
What's
yeah.
happening? Is that wild card there? And then what kind of impact does that have on everything, right? Because it's not just now our housing shortage is even grander, everything's stressed potentially. So is that been anticipated, I guess, in some of these discussions?
It has been anticipated because the two, you know, infrastructure, if I did a formal presentation, you know, you would look at kind of all the trends that we're looking at. And so on the infrastructure side, what has really held us back for growth, right? And infrastructure is very broad. It's everything from sewer and water, and we certainly have some constraints in certain communities with that, particularly with our food processing and some of those more taxing kind of projects that we do. And then there's roads and intermodal transportation and all of that. But the two things that have really held us back are housing, because we have a very low housing stock available. It's very old inventory. And we were having that even at the time where, you know, before COVID, when we were having these really large economic growth spurts. And the other one is broadband, to be honest. And the broadband is actually, we learned a lot of things during COVID, good and bad, about ourselves. The good thing is we found out we could run the world from this place right here, right? If we were connected. And so broadband became a major emphasis. So with Governor Reynolds' leadership and the legislature, major investments have been made this past few years in both housing and broadband. And so I think broadband is actually the great equalizer bringing people back. Because again, they're rethinking of where they are, but yet maybe they don't want to give up their great job. And I'm going to give you an example of that. I was in Mount Ayr, Iowa, and went into a downtown building that had been renovated inside, and you walk in and it's like great space like this. Remind me of something you would like see on a small scale in the Chelsea neighborhood, New York City. And it was locally sourcing beet from the local farmer and cheese, and then they decided that they needed pizza, and so they started an artisanal pizza product that they were delivering out of there, and then somebody was making cheese boards. I mean, it was just incredible. But by the way, it was being ran by basically 3 couples as volunteers. And if you looked at the woman's card who was leading it, she's an executive with Cisco out of California, right? And 2 of the gentlemen that were part of this volunteer group were working, I believe they were working remotely with COVID with their company in Kansas City. They decided that's great, but yet we can open our own business here. And so they bought a business like 1 block off Main Street and are doing that. So what's happening is they're allowed to live bigger where they are. They have roots there. And because of connectivity, they're not missing a beat, right? And so I do believe this broadband is some of the best investment we have made that will actually help us on that population growth. And it is actually growing all parts of Iowa, not just the urban centers. You're seeing people have choices in rural Iowa, and they're doing some amazing things. So yeah, so we're planning, and the schools need it, right? So many of the schools actually are losing population. So for them to get more kids, that's actually a really good thing, and most of the capacity. So I'm not concerned about, the only thing I'm concerned about is housing. So all of you in the housing development need to, and again, even though the legislature was very generous in giving us more resources, there are certain programs that could still use more capacity because we're dealing with this huge pent-up demand. So we're making the case, and you can do that too. Actually, I really would ask you to get your legislators at the state level into your projects that you're doing, your rehab projects, your new building projects, and really show them that it's really making a difference and it is critical for our economic growth. All right, other questions? Oh, sure. Yeah, he's good. Yes.
Elderly population.
Yeah.
I refuse to be older, but I am. But eventually
I'm probably in the same category you are.
I'm
so-
going to eventually sell the business and whatever, and then
Yeah.
go play more golf. But I don't necessarily want to keep the house that I have because it's too damn big. But I don't necessarily want to go into a condominium. What are we doing for that next transition? Because, I mean, we see all these elderly homes going in there, and I'm tired of getting all the stuff from Cottage Grove and stuff like that. I don't want to go there yet.
Yeah.
What's in the medium there for somebody who's incredibly independent?
Yeah, so you know what we're seeing is a lot of people within our generation that are saying, do I want this big house? And obviously they're extremely marketable for families, right? So that's a win-win. Are seeing, actually lofts in downtown spaces that are amazing. I am a big believer in that. And of course, I am a building hugger. I will just admit it. I have yet to see a building that can't be restored. Some of them take a lot of incentives to get us there, as you know, but we're seeing that. And the other thing I think, part of the new tax plan, which by the way was a great thing for Iowa, the new tax plan is getting rid of retirement income is a great thing because now for retirees that want to go somewhere warmer for a few months, they can do that without moving their residency because what happened when they move their residency is it not just also that's usually where their philanthropic giving goes too, right? And being able to now allow that here. So what we're seeing people say, okay, I'm still going to keep my condo in Florida or Arizona, but I'm going to keep my residence in Iowa, and downtown lofts are really what people are looking at. And so it's a win-win. So it's also creating that activity in a downtown that's beyond that 5 o'clock range. And so that's really, really exciting to see. So that would be my suggestion. Look at a downtown loft. Because I think, we keep our eye on that as well. Let me just kind of talk about the economy a little bit because, I get asked this all the time. So I believe it was Jamie Dimon who said we're headed for an economic hurricane, right? And I have a great respect for Jamie Dimon. He may have tempered it a bit, right? But so much, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, you look at where inflation is, record high. There's some signs of easing, but I will tell you, I am critical of the Fed's management of this. I think they were way too slow to get involved when they kept using words like transitory when people that were telling them otherwise it is not transitory because there's a stickiness to this inflation that is not going to go away, right? So that was difficult to see. And even though wages have gone up, wages have not kept up with inflation. So people are really having difficulties out there. And then, of course, I don't know if someone's reading the Farmer Almanac or what, but they always say winter is coming as if it's in quotation marks, something from Game of Thrones. So I don't know what that means. Winter always comes right here, but apparently it's going to be a really, really bad winter. And then you look at heating and fuel costs, which is, again, problematic. So you've got that are putting pressure, and then you have interest rates that are high, and so I understand concerns. And, now we saw an increase in our GDP growth, but if you really drilled it back, a lot of that was government spending, which I quite think went on way too long, and it was net exports, right? But with a strong dollar, that's not sustainable either. So it is concerning what's happening out there. And then you look at the political unrest in the world. However, right, you look at that, but then you look at Iowa, and I will say that we are in an enviable position. We have a diversified economy. Governor Reynolds provides strong leadership. I think a lot of right decisions were made navigating these last few years that have served us well. We are ranked one of the most resilient states going into COVID and coming out. I just said, we're ranked #1 for affordable housing and opportunity, and again, the diversified economy is serving us. So regardless of what's happening, I am extremely bullish on the Iowa economy and Iowans, right? We are extremely resilient, and I think that will also serve us well. I think what you're going to see, though, this next year is there's a lot of people that are sitting on investments that are waiting. They're going to hold off. They're going to wait and see, right? There are people that need to hire that have decided they're not going to hire. But they are going to continue to do automation and all those things that they need to do to be able to be more productive and to be more competitive in still a global economy. Even though we're moving things back, we still operate in a global economy. And so, again, people were making the right investments. So if you look at the state of Iowa, you know, we had nice reserves going into COVID, and we've been spending it wisely, that and the ARPA dollars. We're doing it on daycare. We're doing it on housing. We're putting it into broadband. We're putting it into education. We're putting it into all of, not growing government, but actually making one-time investments in infrastructure that will provide a foundation and propel us forth regardless of what the economic winds are nationally and globally. And so, again, you know, Iowa doesn't tend to have the real highs, but neither do we have the real lows. And that has served us well, and I think it will continue to serve us well going forward. So we're going to continue to get more competitive. We're going to continue to market our state, and we're going to continue to make investments that are going to serve Iowans. So thank you. I've been doing this gig for 12 years. It was supposed to be temporary, which is why my husband still lives in Sioux City, and I go home on the weekends. But I am humbled to serve, and it's things like this that get us so inspired. You know, we spend time, like I said, I'm on the road 2 to 3 days a week in communities of all sizes. And I do that because, one, you keep it real, right? People keep it real. Two, you find out what's working and what's not working. And the nice thing about Iowa, it's not 6 degrees of separation. It literally is 1 degree of separation, right? If there's an issue, you pick up the phone and call me. The only number on my business card is my cell phone. And whether it's us, the governor's office, or whoever, whatever state agency, we are extremely accessible. And the reason for that is so that we can be able to work with you, to partner with you to solve problems. And so you guys have done some great things here. You've taken advantage of a lot of our programs, and actually you've given us a great return on investment. So thank you for what you do. And happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you so much. On behalf of HEDCO, I'm hoping that everyone had an enjoyable time tonight. It's an encouraging note to end the 22 year on. Make sure that if you haven't gone to the bar and had yourself a drink, please do that. Stay, mingle, talk to Debbie for as long as she might be here. But again, Debbie, thank you so much for your leadership. And you are just a phone call away. I know this, a true statement. So I appreciate the fact that you are landing here on your massive tour of Iowa. So happy end of the year, guys, and happy start to 2023. Thanks for being here.